In both the 1900 novel and the 1939 film adaptation of The Wizard of Oz, when Oscar Zoroaster Phadrig Isaac Norman Hinkle Emmanuel Ambrose Diggs is accused of being a very bad man, he says,
"Oh, no, my dear, I'm a very good man. I'm just a very bad wizard."
That's not exactly true, is it? Looking at just the film for a second, he promises to grant the wishes of Dorothy and her companions if she kills the Wicked Witch, something that easily could have gotten them killed. And he didn't even have any way of granting their wishes. If it wasn't for Toto's detective work, they would have been trapped in Oz to this day. In the books, it's even worse. You find out in the second book, Oscar kidnapped the rightful queen of Oz, Ozma, when she was an infant and gave her to the evil witch Mombi, who gave her gender reassignment surgery without her consent. For all he knew, Mombi was a cannibal and would have used Ozma for some blood magic to take over the furthest reaches of the realm. This, on top of his deceit in the first book, can hardly be considered the actions of a good man/bad wizard. And even after we find out about how he deposed Ozma, the characters in World don't seem to have a problem with him. He escapes back to Nebraska in the first book, but in the fourth book, he accidentally returns to Oz, and Ozma lets him live in a palace, and Glinda even starts training him in magic. Part of the problem is L. Frank Baum didn't know he would write a sequel to The Wizard of Oz, though Oscar's actions in that book are still pretty deplorable on their own. But also, he wasn't that concerned with continuity between books. He would introduce a new neighboring realm or some character who probably should have been mentioned before, but only becomes relevant in whatever book he introduced them in. So by the time you get to book 4, who cares about him selling Ozma to an evil witch? That was 2 books ago. But I thought of a way you could keep the wizard as the pseudo-antagonist from the first book, keep his actions with Ozma from years earlier, and not contradict his statement of being a good man. When he arrives in Oz, Pastoria is the ruler, maybe. We're told all rulers are either named Oz or Ozma, but sloppy world building and continuity. Pastoria is having trouble keeping everything together, as you've got 3 evil witches trying to take the land for themselves. In the books, the Wicked Witches of the West and East were not sisters. Maybe they're working together, but are looking for chances to double-cross each other if it means getting a bigger piece of the pie for themselves. Oscar lands in his balloon, the people think he's a wizard, maybe a reincarnation of a past ruler, as his name does sort of sound like Oz. He doesn't correct them because, as his legend grows, the witches might think he poses a threat to them. If they find out he's just a humbug, they'll kill him rather than let his fame spread. If they still think he's a wizard, he has a chance of not getting killed. And he's a little egotistical. If someone says he's a god, that makes him feel good, until he sees what a quandary he's in. Pastoria asks for help in deposing the Wicked Witches. It's a little late to come clean, but Oscar allies with Pastoria, as he doesn't mean any harm to Oscar. The later books tell us Mombi took Pastoria's memories, but Mombi was styled as a witch of the north, which makes me think the witch of the east or the west drove her into the north. When Pastoria went missing, Oscar had no idea what happened to him, and most of the king's advisors and subjects turned to Oscar to lead them. Mombi came to Oscar, whispering that one of the other witches had done something to Pastoria and might come for Ozma next. While Oscar knows Mombi is a threat, he's tricked himself into thinking she's not as much of a threat as the other witches. Maybe he's right if they were able to drive Mombi away. Mombi says she can protect Ozma. He knows this isn't ideal, but he knows, pragmatically speaking, Mombi would be a fool to cause harm to Ozma, as keeping the rightful queen hostage is a valuable bargaining chip against the other witches. Reluctantly, Oscar agrees, knowing he's powerless to do anything against Mombi, and even going so far as to ask for her word to keep Ozma safe, which he doesn't know does not include giving her a penis. And with the rightful queen as safe as she can possibly be, Oscar continues ruling her kingdom, looking for ways to depose the other witches. And that's it. He still doesn't come off looking great, but much better than he does based on what the books tell us. And really, he does the best he can in the circumstances he's stuck in, which is much more interesting to me than someone who is 100% good or evil. But what do you think if you care about this discrepancy? Let me know, and I'll be back in the future to talk about something else. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Catch you later.